This is the next part of the 54-inch cardigan knit along, and I have cast on 60 stitches and I need 66, and I've used the cable cast on method, which is, as I've shown you before, and I'm using 3.25mm needles. I don't know whether you can see them on the sizes, don't show up very well on these needles on the video. So I need to cast on another 6 stitches, and like I showed before, the cable cast on is knitting into the back of the whole stitch, not the front of the stitch. And as you can see, if you look at my cast on edge, they look like a cable running along there. That's why they're called cable cast on. So you go into the back of the whole stitch, and I'm going to knit 6. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So that is 66 stitches, and now I'm going to knit twisted rib, 1 by 1 twisted rib. You're going to knit into the back of every knit stitch on every row. Let's knit 1, purl 1, knit 1, purl 1, and into the back of the knit stitch, where I usually lift the needle into the front and then take it into the back. I find it easier getting into the back of the stitch that way. Purl 1, knit 1, that's purl 1, knit 1, purl 1. And you are going to do 16 rows in that stitch, knit 1, purl 1. So that's 16 rows in twisted rib we've knit, and now we're going to change to 4mm needles, and we're going to knit 2 rows in stocking stitch, 1 row knit and 1 row purl. So I'm starting with the knit row. So that's the 2 rows of stocking stitch, and now we're going to start the pattern. And the pattern is just knit 2, purl 2. So that's your starting off the beginning of the row with knit 2, purl 2, knit 2, purl 2, and knit 2, purl 2. And you're going to knit 2 and purl 2 all the way across that row, and the next row you're going to do a purl row. And I will be back after I've done that. So those are the first 2 rows of the pattern, which we knit 2, purl 2, knit 2, purl 2 all the way across the row, and then we did a purl row on the other side. Now the next row we are going to purl 2, where you have purl stitches and going to knit stitches, you're going to purl over them. So it's going to be 2 purl, 2 knit, 2 purl, 2 knit. We're going to knit purl 2 and knit 2, purl 2, knit 2, all the way across the row, purl 2 and knit 2, and then I will be back when it comes to the purl row. So we are now on to the purl row, which is going to be the increasing row on every on every increase. So we're going to purl the first stitch and then pick that bar up in between the stitches. That's like a little bar across. Just pick it up, put it onto the needle so that the long part of the stitch is at the back and the short part at the front. And you would probably have to lift the stitch for this, but you're going to purl into the front like that. And then you're going to purl across to the end of the row, to the last stitch. And as you can see, that stitch has just worked into with the rest. Now I'll be back when I get to the end of that row. Now we're on to the last few stitches, so I have 3 more stitches to knit. And the same as what you did at the start of the row, there is a little bar between those last 2 stitches. So you put that on the needle and make sure the long part is at the back and the short part at the front. And like I told you before, you probably have to lift the stitch a little bit with your finger to get the needle through it. And you're going to purl that stitch and then purl the last stitch. And that is how the best way to decrease with the pattern like this, to increase, sorry, I could call it decrease. Now your next row you would have started with knit 2, but because you added an extra stitch, it's going to be purl 1 and then knit 2. So you would purl that first stitch. You have to work those extra stitches into the pattern, and then the next stitches are knit 2. And then purl 2. And that is how the pattern goes. And you are going to increase that way on each end of every 8th row, being a wrong side row, until you have 94 stitches. Right, the sleeve now measures 17.5 inches and we have 94 stitches, and now we're going to start decreasing. So for decreasing you need, before you start it, I don't cast off stitches at the start of the armhole shaping, and you'll need these to know where you start. So I'm going to put one in each side and the last stitch on. Put one on there and one on the other end. It's a bit awkward, I'll have to push it in that way. That's so you know where your decreasing starts on the thing. And now we're going to, I'm checking my instructions to get it right. So we're going to decrease at the beginning and the end of this row 1 stitch. We're just going to knit 2 together. Knit 2 together through the back of the loops. And then pattern to the last 2 stitches. And I knit across to my last 2 stitches. And I'm almost at the end of the row to the last 2 stitches. And I'm just going to knit 2 stitches together Now for the first of the decreasing, it's going to be done on every third row until we have 86 stitches. So we're going to knit 2 more rows, and when you decrease on the it'll be so many decreases will be on the wrong side on the purl row. You just purl 2 together at the start of the row and purl 2 together through the back of the loops at the end of the row, but I will show you that when I come to it. So I'm going to purl 1 row and knit 1 more row. So now we're on the purl row and we're just purling the first 2 stitches and then just going to purl across to the last 2 stitches. Now we're on to the last few stitches, so purl 1 stitch and then we're going to purl into the back. So I'm lifting that up a little bit to make more room to get the needle through. That's why I'm going in the front, but I'm going into the back and purling into the back of those 2 stitches. And that makes the stitch lean this way. If I'd just knitted them, it would have leaning outwards. Probably wouldn't matter anyway, because when you sew it up, that will be sewn up in, you probably won't see it, but that's the way I do it. So that is the third row that we've decreased on after the other one, and you're going to do it on every third row again until you have 86 stitches left. And then after you have 86 stitches, you're going to be doing the decreasing on every other row. I'm checking my book here again. Until you have 60 stitches, and then when you have 60 stitches you are doing it on every row until there are 24 stitches. For anyone that wants to see the information here is you have 17.5 inches. I did 124 rows, but it depends on the length of the sleeve. Someone else might want more than 17.5 inches. So you just work until whatever length you're doing the sleeve to. And then you decrease on each end of the next row and on every third row until you have 86 stitches remaining. Then knit 2 more rows and decrease on next and every alternate row until you have 60 stitches. And decrease each end of every row until there are 24 stitches, and you cast off those stitches. But I will come back when I get to the 86 stitches and tell you. So I've now decreased up to 86 stitches, and I've knit the 2 rows after, and now I'm going to decrease at each end of every alternate row from this row, knitting into the back of the first 2 stitches, and knitting across the row to the last 2 stitches, and then we'll knit those 2 stitches together. And that is how we're going to decrease until there are 60 stitches left. We now have 60 stitches left on the needle, and I'm now going to decrease on every row until we have 24 stitches left, and then we'll be casting those stitches off, or as it's said in other countries, bind off. We always see cast off in the United Kingdom. So we're going to decrease as normal on the knit row. That is purl 2 together into the back of the loops, and then just follow the pattern to your last 2 stitches. We had the last 3 stitches with the purl one and knit 2 together through the front of the loops. And for the purl, we're just going to purl 2 together as normal through the front of the loops, and then just purl to your last 2 stitches. And now we have 2 stitches left, and we are going to knit through the back. But I always go through the front and loosen the stitches like that. Makes it easier to get your needle in through the back. So you're going through the back of those loops and purling. So that's how you're going to be decreasing on every row until you have 24 stitches left, and I will be back then. We now have 24 stitches left, and now I'm going to cast those stitches off. I'm going to slip the first stitch, hit the next stitch, just cast it off, and then just follow your stitches, what stitches you would do across, and cast off in the way the stitches are. So that's a purl stitch, then knit stitch. So you just purl the same way you would have knit the row, the same stitches. And then just keep going until all the stitches are cast off. So we're down to the last stitch, and now we're just going to tie that off. So I'll cut some wool off. And pull it through. So that is the sleeve finished. So all I have to do now is sew up the shoulder seams, and the next part will be how to do the neckband.